Good evening. Good evening, soon-to-be graduates, parents, family, and friends of soon-to-be graduates, and teachers and administrators of those soon-to-be graduates. It's extraordinary what we find to worry about. This morning, for example, I worried, will my alarm clock go off? Will my car start? Will my pants fit? Will my bow tie droop? So many things to worry about, and so little of it truly worth worrying. I want to begin by recounting the needless anxiety felt by Ms. Pajot about 6 weeks ago. Ms. Pajot sent me a terse email. It read, "Can I come talk with you today?" You all know what happened. Immediately my brain started going through a list of what I might have fouled up or neglected to do in recent days, and the list was quite long. Mercifully, Ms. Pajot was able to come up to my office in the next hour. She walked in, sat down, and looked at me. I was already sitting down and looking at her. She was clearly apprehensive and began, "I'm not sure how to say this." Her anxiety only heightened my own. What devastating news was she so reluctant to deliver? She wanted to know if I would be willing to speak at the baccalaureate dinner again this year. And that request made her anxious. Really? Would I be willing to talk to a room filled with people who were literally going to be held hostage by their own good manners and thereby forced to listen to me? Who, out of politeness or simple relief, would applaud at the end of my talk? Would I, bashful, tongue-tied, spotlight-loathing person that I am, be willing to have my face and my more than ample frame magnified on 4 large screens in front of hundreds of people? Ding-dang right I would. So here I am. And now, there are at least 40 of you out there with whom I've shared approximately 115 hours. You 40 are rightfully thinking, what more could he possibly have to say? And your bewilderment is matched by my uncertainty. What more can I say? I want to begin by telling you about one of my recurring nightmares. I've died and I've gone to what I guess is the equivalent of the judgment seat. Now, since I was raised Catholic, I imagine St. Peter seeing me approach the golden gates. He doesn't even look up from his book, simply mutters, "Name?" I clearly and confidently say, "George Lucas." He looks up with excitement, which I quash by saying, no, not that George Lucas. Disappointment clearly etched on his face. He says, "How do you spell it?" Once I do, he begins intently examining the book, the page from the gleaming golden book that he has flipped through. Then he goes back to the top and pores over it again. "Sorry," he says, "your name's not here." I quaveringly retort, "Oh, there must be a mistake. I'm George Lucas, the English teacher who spent his entire adult life teaching students to appreciate literature and aspire for extraordinary lives." A look of recognition comes upon his face, and for a moment I mistakenly feel relieved. "Oh, you're that George Lucas. I think you're the other book. Whereupon he reaches over to a darker, thicker text, a tome whose thin pages remind me of almost any edition of the Norton Anthology of Literature. He looks to a certain page, his finger lingers on a particular spot and says, "Yep, just as I remembered, you're going to the other place. Over the 39 years of your career, you have vaporized a cumulative 36,423 hours of your students' lives on the meaningless and the mundane. Good thing you're accustomed to heat and humidity. You're going to have plenty of it where you're going." At which point, in a dream, I usually wake up in a cold sweat. I really, really, really don't want to bore you. But I also don't want to simply entertain you. This is a special evening, with an even more special day coming up in 2 weeks. Last year, at Baccalaureate, I spoke about not only seizing the day, carpe diem, but also seizing the moment, carpe momentum. And I believe that I did all right, but when I reread my words afterward, I realized that I had left out some things that are kind of important. I had left out the why and the how. Why should we seize the day? How can it be seized? Now, I recognize that there are people with bushel baskets of answers to those questions. But those other people aren't up here this evening. So I'm going to give you my answers. If you want others, you'll have to Google them. Why should we seize each day, each moment? My answer is because it enlarges us. It enlarges the sphere of our experience. Joseph Campbell, one of my heroes, said, "What we are all looking for is not the meaning of life. It is the experience of having lived." You've received a magnificent education here at Berkeley. But in some way, you are like hothouse flowers, exotics that have thrived in a carefully controlled greenhouse environment. But you are moving out of that meticulously tended environment. You're moving into different soil, with different varieties of plants around you, and with different gardeners. You're going out into the world, not only to make a positive difference, but also to experience and grow in that larger world. That larger world has so many more vistas, so many more windows than you have experienced thus far. In The Great Gatsby, the narrator, Nick Carraway, says that life is viewed most successfully through a single window. And he's right, if you equate success with oversimplification. If you have only one view out into the world, one tiny slice of experience, your choices will be clear and simple, but doubtlessly wrong. The world is complicated, and you didn't learn everything you need to know in kindergarten. You learn about that complicated world by doing two things. First, by actually seeing the world and the people around you. At the end of, guess what my favorite play is? Our Town. When Emily returns from her grave to relive her 12th birthday, she is appalled to recognize how little she was aware of what other people, even her own family members, were feeling. She says, "So all that was going on, and we never noticed." I repeat, so all that was going on, and we never noticed. What a sobering realization. Horrifying, really, because we are forced to acknowledge our own limited vision and our own limited sensitivity to the feelings and needs of others. Who among us has not felt like kicking ourselves when we learn about the difficult situation someone close to us is in? When we think back about all the clear warning signs and indications that trouble that we missed because of our own self-absorption? Who among us has not shuddered recalling something we said to someone because of our blindness to what was going on in her or his life? So my first admonition is, notice things. Henry James set for himself the goal of, quote, being one of those people on whom nothing is lost. That might be setting the bar a bit high, but it's a glorious quest. Be one upon whom nothing is lost. Now let's turn our attention to how we can refine our eyesight. I think we need to deliberately search out people, books, magazines that hold ideas different than ours. I came to this realization rather late in my own life, and I owe it to one of my students. In almost every way, the relationship between teacher and student is symbiotic. One moment I am teaching, the next moment I am learning. One of the most pivotal moments that I have had in the classroom occurred perhaps 15 years ago. I was teaching a philosophy-based course and had recommended some books to my students. Right after the class ended, one of those students slowly but deliberately sidled up to my desk and asked, "Mr. Lucas, do you ever read any books that you know you are going to disagree with?" Oh my God. I realized how seldom I did that, and how impoverished my perspective was because of that neglect. So I started reading books I never would have. I began discussing issues with people who I knew held opposing viewpoints. And you know what? As E.E. Cummings would simply say, I just growed. You should do likewise. Seek out those who disagree with you, listen to them, grapple with ideas, but not the person. Treat each other gently. You'll be more fully aware, more fully human because of it. Walt Whitman wrote, "Do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes." And we all do. We contain multitudes of selves that long to be expressed, that long to be integrated into some sort of whole. Let's never be satisfied with anything less than wholeness. You are all off to college next year. Don't make it a single pony trick. Ralph Waldo Emerson lamented any man or woman who is just a lawyer, just a carpenter, just a teacher or a doctor. He argued that what each of us needs to be is a man or woman in full, a woman or man who just happens to be practicing law, working with wood, teaching students, or attending to the bodies and minds of our patients. Not an engineer, but a woman practicing engineering. Not a kindergarten teacher, but a man teaching young children. Be more than your major. Be more than your occupation. Be as whole and aware of both yourself and others as you can be. I'm finishing. I love teaching. It is the vehicle by which I've followed my bliss for nearly 40 years. But the bliss itself is the interaction with you. You help me to see the world so much more fully in all of its complexities and wonders. Berkeley has given you much for which you should be grateful. Your parents have given you much for which you should be grateful. But remember, too, that you have given each other so much for which you should be grateful. You have shared 4 or 7 or perhaps 14 years together. You have been there for one another in moments of celebration and in moments of hardship. You've laughed and you've cried together. I hope that tonight, one of the last times you will all be gathered together, you will simply take a moment to look around you. I'm going to stop talking for just a moment and look at the people and faces that surround you. And as you do so, remember and appreciate all of those times you have shared. Emily, in our town, didn't notice what was going on around her until it was too late. All of us here tonight are so fortunate. For us, it's still not too late. Let's seize the opportunity. Let's seize the moment. Let's look each other in the eye and say, thank you. Thank you for being such an important part of my life. To which I now add, thank you for being such a meaningful part of my life. Bon voyage.